It seems like every year the type and frequency of emails I receive asking for technical help kind of changes. And recently there's a lot more questions about these automatic climate controls, cruise controls, tachometers, and so on. So we're looking at what I would consider advanced electronics, which plague many people with these 35-year-old cars. These are all cars of the early 1980s here, and they have what's called the Generation 2 climate control that's supposed to be automatic and it's not automatic, and of course the tachometers most of the time don't work. You got to remember, these cars are old. Don't just say, oh, they're not reliable. Some of them have very high mileage on them. So, you know, if you're going to own one of these old Mercedes like this and you're going to drive it and have some fun driving it, it's kind of nice to have the cruise control working, the tachometer working, the climate control working, and other miscellaneous things, even the original radios, which I've really gotten into the last few weeks. All these 4 cars now are going to get their original radios just because I like looking. I know the sound isn't as good as some great, radio with Bluetooth and so on, but that's not why I drive these old cars, to listen to music. I really drive them just for the ambiance, if you could say. That's my personal opinion, of course. For the past 3 weeks, I'm working on these systems. I'm trying to come up with solutions. I've got a couple of new kits and new videos coming out that will help you troubleshoot these systems. But I'm particularly happy here with Cherry, my 380 SL today. I've been out driving it for the last hour. It's a beautiful fall day here in the Pacific Northwest. And guess what? I have the tach working, the cruise control working. I have the climate control working superbly. Now, many of you will say, well, I don't care. I don't need cruise control. I don't need a tach. I can listen. But nobody's going to argue that you wouldn't like to have your climate control working properly. In other words, if you set it at 70 degrees, it stays there. Or if you put it on hot, it gets hot and not cold, and vice versa. So what's happened here is I've installed the new Klima monovalve system in this 380 SL. I've also installed it in all 3 of these W123s, and you cannot believe the difference. I went out on the road, I did some tests, I used my stopwatch, and I can set this on full cold, driving at 40 miles an hour, and roll it up to full hot, and it takes about 30 seconds. Can you believe that? If you've been around these old climate control systems, that's pretty quick to go from full cold to full hot on this cool fall day in 30 seconds. Now, rolling it from full hot to full cold takes about a minute, but still, that's amazing. So that's one of the unique things about this new monovalve assembly from Klima, is it does respond very quickly. Now, of course, you have to have switch panels that work. You have to have logic boxes, temperature logic boxes that aren't failing if this system's going to work. So I've been going through these cars, pulling off climate control panels, pulling off shift wood, changing light bulbs. I think I have about 12 videos coming out, because all these things, like, okay, how do you glue the wood back onto that panel over the climate control switch panel? It's always loose. What about the shift wood in the back? That pin's always broken. So I've come up with a new kit to fix that. So I'm having a great time. You can see that having these 4 cars and working on these systems is really challenging, because you get into some really sophisticated stuff, particularly with the cruise control or the climate control. But first I want to show you the Klima monovalve in this 380 SL. I've also come up with a kit which will allow you to improve the performance of your temperature sensor in the center of your dash, and also to protect your sensitive climate control panel from potential overload or failure of the auxiliary water pump. Now, some of you may not know that. If that auxiliary water pump seizes up and it draws a lot of current, it'll ruin your climate control panels. We've got a way to prevent that in this new kit, and I'll explain a little bit more about that as we go along. Now, if you're watching this video, this is the end of November 2021, there's going to be ongoing work in these areas over the next 2 months. And I will put links in the Show More description below this video. Just click on Show More, and I'll put updated links to things I've come up with, solutions kits, instruction manuals, and so on, that may help you fix these systems in your 107, 126, and W123 Mercedes-Benz. Take a look at the new Klima monovalve assembly that I installed. You know, this is just a great new product. It's just a plug-in assembly complete, and it's real quick because you just have to unhook the hose, unplug it, bolt a new one in, and you're ready to go. Also, you want to note this here. You're wondering why there's a fuse holder that's plugged in this area. Well, that's my new protection fuse for the climate control panel, and I'll be discussing that more in a future video, or you can check the links below. So this is what's working. I got a working auxiliary water pump. I tested that. Brand new monovalve assembly and a protection for my climate control. I also went in under the dash. You have to remove the glove box, and I replaced that failing hose for the dash temperature sensor. Now I will provide a little kit with instructions on how to install this fuse holder and how to replace that failing hose under the dashboard in these early 1981 to 1985 climate control systems. Now my white 300 TD wagon got the whole ball of wax. We replaced that hose under the dash. I replaced the monovalve assembly. I pulled this wood piece off, replaced the climate control push button panel, replaced all the bulbs, installed a rebuilt Becker Europa radio, and then I pulled this wood off and replaced that broken pin on the back, where you see most of those have broken off, and this will lift up on you and won't fit properly and drive you crazy. You can see here I'm still working on the 85 wagon. I got the wood pieces off, re-gluing them, and we installed the Grand Prix electronic radio, and it's working great. And I've got the shift wood off because I had to replace that back pin there. You can see the new pin that we're going to be offering on my website. So any of you who have this shift wood that's loose in the back, there's the solution right there. My 1984 300D also got a new Klima monovalve unit installed and a protection fuse on the auxiliary water pump. On this one, we really had the dash torn out, changing switches, changing light bulbs, installing the new factory radio, and fixing that rear pin on the shift wood. Final thing in here is to re-glue this wood piece. And there's a trick to gluing this, so I'll cover that in a later video, but this is the final thing I have to do in my 300D. We have working tach, we have working climate control, working original radio, and the climate control works beautifully. And I almost forgot to mention the rear wiper dilemma on most of these 300 TD wagons. You know, that old wiper assembly is either seized, broken, or doesn't work properly. So I went to work too on these wipers and got the one on the white wagon just working beautifully after totally rebuilding the entire unit. After rebuilding about 4 of these, I decided to go ahead and do an advanced instructional video series on how you can do these yourself, how you can pull it out of the wagon, take it apart, repair a broken casing, fix the motors, re-lubricate it, because the lubrication of this unit here is one of the top keys for long life. The 2 key components for the cruise control system are the cruise amp, which is located under the dash by the brake pedal, and the cruise actuator, which is mounted up on the engine and has the linkage going to your throttle. Now, most of the problems are related to these 2 items, and over the next month or so I'll be going over how to take these apart, inspect them, repair them, and so on. If you can get these 2 units working properly, generally you'll be able to get a good working cruise control. The climate control is a little more complicated, and there are 3 or 4 key components that you may have to deal with. This is the climate control switch panel. which you're very familiar with. Very obvious. It sits on the center of the dash and controls the speed and the temperature and so on. This is the monovalve assembly. The monovalve itself has been removed, and that's your aux water pump, which pushes coolant through the monovalve. You want to make sure that pump is working, but this can be a problem too. And then over here, less known for problems, but very typical on these old cars, is a temperature logic box, which is located up under the dash behind the glove box on the W123s. When this fails, you'll have really weird things going on with controlling your temperature. Now, what are you going to do? Which one is it? If your temperature's not holding or not working properly, is it the monovalve? Is it the climate control switch panel? Is it the logic box? Is it that funky hose going to your temperature sensor? These are the things that are driving owners crazy. So over the next month or two, we're going to really dig into this and see if we can't come up with a really good way to show you how to troubleshoot, repair, and or replace any of these components to get your climate control working properly.